Nostradamus has taken their rightful spot at the top of the league. Bad guys and big limbs are making big moves, and hog heaven's in a downward spiral. This and much, much more on this week's mid-season wrap-up of Fantasy Football Forum. I'm Floyd, and I bring the heat.
And this is Sean, the Greek.
Together, we host the Fantasy Football Forum. Welcome to the mid-season wrap-up of Fantasy Football Forum. How you doing, Greek?
I'm good, Floyd. Thanks for having me. Excited.
All righty. So, what we're going to do is we're going to do a mid-season wrap-up on the Fantasy Football League known as Buckeyes. So, we have 12 teams in the league. We're going to do a mid-season wrap-up today. Later, we will probably do an end-of-season type of wrap-up. Maybe a playoff wrap-up, something like that, somewhere around the end of the season. And then in the and we'll probably do, if everybody enjoys this and this is something that's popular, then we will probably do a preseason next year and continue this. Is that right, Greek?
Sounds good to me. It might be just you and I listening to these at the end of the day, but what the heck?
That'll be fine. I'll enjoy it anyway. So we're going to run down the teams, but we're not just going to run them down from top to bottom. We're going to kind of bounce around a little bit. We might even do like the top team and then the bottom team and then the second team and second from the bottom, that type of thing, kind of back and forth. Then we're going to talk about some upcoming games that are going to be crucial to the season. We're going to talk about how we think the playoffs are going to shape up. And then Greek and I are going to actually do a prediction on who we think will not make the playoffs. So I think we have a pretty good idea who the top 4, 5, 6 teams are. Who are going to be the bottom 4? I think that's going to be the big question.
Now, do we have to give equal time to all these teams? Or
I would say not. No,
I would say there's a couple that don't deserve equal time. But I just wanted to see if we had to abide by some FCC rules here or anything.
No. There's no rules or regulations here at the forum.
Okay, well, we're done with bad guys then.
All right. So as we mentioned in our little intro, Nostradamus has started to take a pretty good hold on the league itself. Nostradamus, I'm going to run down real quick, just for anybody else that's not in the league or hasn't been in the league for several years. I'm going to run down the championship, the number of championships that each team has. Nostradamus is tied at the top with 3 championships. Then next comes Hog Heaven and WNS Eagles, who also, those teams also have 3 championships. After that, you have Bad Guys, who has 2 championships. And then actually a couple people that are no longer in the league. Corey Streeter, Jared Barnett have 1 championship each. And then you have Victor Herman, who has 1 championship. So,
side note, Corey Streeter has not been in the league for a decade. So at this point, if he has more championships than you do, you may want to rethink your strategy.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
And I believe Jared hasn't been with us for at least half a decade.
Yeah, when did he drop out?
I think that we actually were blessed with Tim when Jared hit the bricks, and then that's when Tim took over Jared's spot, if I remember correctly.
So just for a little backstory, we started this league in 2004.
Yep.
And so this is our, I guess our 14th year? 15th.
I always get confused on it. I don't know if you had the 0. I don't know.
I think it's 15th.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good number. It's the 15th year we started the podcast.
So let's start from the top and talk about Nostradamus.
Winning.
First and foremost, like Floyd already mentioned, this guy is part of the 3-Timers Club. There's only 3 people in that. It's kind of like the equivalent of the SNL 5-Timers Club. So I guess we're starting with a good one. I could talk about this guy all day. Buttoned up as usual.
Buttoned up, I think caught a little bit of break. I don't know how the waiver wire hawks known as Bad Guys and WNS Eagles missed it. But when Bell wasn't going to be playing, I cannot believe that Nostradamus was able to pick up Connor.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I actually heard from a source that Nostradamus was actually in the mountains of Tennessee at that time and didn't even have internet access, and was surprised to find that Connor was still there available on his ride home from Labor Day weekend. So I couldn't agree with you more. A little luck.
Those two are kicking themselves. Also, obviously, hit a home run with Mahomes.
Oh, without a doubt. Steal the draft. I don't have him in front of me. I believe he got him in the 6th round. So basically, you draft someone in the 6th round who's probably scored more points than any other player in the league.
Has 100%.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, yep. So got him in the 6th round. That's another word. Is he good or lucky? You can be the judge of that. But when I look at his roster, solid from top to bottom. You got legitimate receivers at all positions. You got legitimate running backs, a legitimate tight end. Now, with all that said, I will say that it does have a couple question marks heading into the playoff time.
One of those question marks for me, I mean, it's hard to question someone that's 8-1, has the most points scored in the league, but I believe if you check their bench, there's 3 defenses sitting there.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that a mark of an idiot or a mark of a genius? I don't know. Even more for me, I think that when you get into your top flight positions, like your top flight running back, this is the guy that has James Conner and Le'Veon Bell. Nobody knows what's going to happen with that.
Oh, I know.
I don't envy anybody right now. You have no clue what those guys are going to be doing 3 or 4 weeks ago. So if you're Nostradamus right now, you want this to play out over the next 3 weeks, and when week 14 rolls around, you know what's what.
I know. I mean, the Nostradamus is probably in a little bit of a spot of possibly, because, you know, as the NFL and football has evolved, we all know running backs only take so many hits. And so I think teams know that. And if you have Le'Veon Bell and Connor in there, that may be a 2-headed monster by the time playoffs roll around.
I agree. And at the end of the day, you don't want any running back that's in a handcuff position. So the only other thing I would say, like I said, pretty solid team. The only other question mark is their flex position. It's not strong. I would not be shocked to see Nostradamus make a move towards the trade deadline.
I believe when I looked, I think Nostradamus currently has a trade in action, right?
Oh, I believe so. I just saw it come across the wire the other day. Actually traded one of those those aforementioned defenses you spoke of, 3. So
that's right.
It will only be 2 probably by the time this is released. So yeah, moved it for I believe a draft pick to sweetness. So it's a little, I think if you really read the tea leaves and study it, I think the more depth players will be able to see why that trade was made.
Well, we don't want to spend too much time on each team, but I do have one more thing to talk about with Nostradamus. As I mentioned, definitely the leader in the league in wins, but also in points scored. As a matter of fact, with 1,170 points, Nostradamus is 139 points higher than anyone else in the league, which means Nostradamus could take a week off and probably still be the leader in points.
Yeah, he feels a little almost like the Golden State Warriors right now, doesn't he?
So, let's go from the number 1 team in the league to the basement. We're going to talk about Cheeseheads. Cheeseheads is sitting at number 12. I think it's. I don't even think we really need to talk about the personnel at this point.
Really? I wanted to talk about Ricky Seals-Jones. I have 5 minutes of material for Ricky Seals-Jones.
I wanted to talk about the fact that Cheeseheads has Nick O'Leary on their team.
Oh, yeah.
That's Jack Nicklaus's grandson or whatever, yes. But you realize that he's owned by less than 2% of all Yahoo owners.
So that tells me that 2% of Yahoo people are on drugs.
So Cheeseheads, as I said, I don't know about necessarily talking about the personnel, but we can talk about the philosophy and the moves. So Cheeseheads, to me, has been at the bottom of the barrel now for 2 or 3 years, right?
He is without a doubt. That's true. And he is a millennial.
So, but this is my thing. I don't think Cheeseheads is the Cleveland Browns of this league. Because they draft well, they have talent. I think Cheeseheads is like the Detroit Lions of this league.
Okay.
And I think the Detroit Lions have talent. They have potential. And every year they lose a few games, and all of a sudden you're the 2/3 to 3/4 away in the season, and their season's over. And that's in the NFL. I mean, with Cheeseheads, his season's over by the 5th game every year.
No. That was a great analogy you just made. I totally agree with it. If anything, you just look, So basically, I think it was about week 3, week 4, he threw the towel in, started making trades. And according to my calculations, he's made 8 trades. So that was 8 players that people felt that were worthy of trading for.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes right along with what you're saying about the Detroit Lions type thing. So, I mean, he's the youngest member of the league. So I believe he is probably 10, 15 years younger than the other teams. And I think this is just a generational thing where those older teams will never sell. They won't do that. They won't. And then there's something about being that younger generation where, you know what? If I don't think I can win it, I'm going to sell everything off and I'm going to go big next year. So
yeah, and to that point, I believe Cheeseheads has sold for 3 years, right?
According to my 3-time seller, unprecedented. So that not only do we have the 3 guys with the 3 times championships, we also got a 1-time, 3-time seller trophy as well. So
I don't think we'll take too much more time on Cheeseheads. Do you have anything else for that?
Good luck to him.
All right. We're going to go back up to the top, and the number 2 team in the league currently is Bad Guys.
I am the dirtiest player in the game. It goes without saying.
I second that.
So, Bad Guys, a perennial, what I would call a perennial effort guy. I mean...
He's grinding away at this right now somewhere.
Yes. He's probably listening to this, but he's also online looking at the waiver wire.
Yes.
So, Bad Guys has 1,015 points scored, places him in 4th place overall for points scored. Right in the middle as far as moves, he's made 14 moves. That's about the middle. So go ahead.
So you said 4th most points and currently 2nd, so that rings true. No unlucky or unlucky there, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably I would say a little bit of a rarity in he is absolutely loaded at wide receiver.
It is an embarrassment of riches.
And to that point, has traded some of his lesser wide receivers off to try to supplement the rest of his roster, right?
Oh yeah, actually last week, which I thought was a fresh breath of air, there was actually a player-for-player trade in that league between Hog Heaven and Bad Guys, just straight up player-for-player. One team needed running back, one team needed receiver, the others were both, bountiful in the other, and they actually made trades. It was a trade that made sense for both teams, and was, I can't lie, it's kind of nice to see a trade that doesn't include draft picks.
Yeah, absolutely. A little refreshing in that way. I don't really have anything else. I mean, solid player, year in and year out, had a really bad year last year.
Yeah, definitely a down year. It was a rare year for Bad Guys last year. This I couldn't agree more.
I believe finished last.
Last. I believe last in terms of standings and last in terms of points.
Wow.
Which this league actually takes into account for points too. It's just not where you end up with your wins-loss. Points are actually important because it determines draft order.
Absolutely.
But the only thing I would add, can't go, obviously you've already touched upon the receivers. That second running back is definitely a question for old Bad Guys moving forward. I mean, that's the one spot where I just don't see the type of team where you see it wins a championship, where that second running back's a little weak. And that's why he made the move for Dalvin Cook, which that's a boomer bust play. I mean, that guy, if he comes back, it might end up being great. If he doesn't stand out, then I think the Bad Guys is still looking pretty hard to fill that second running back position.
First week looked good. I just question whether Minnesota is going to turn their back on Latavius now that Latavius Murray's carried him this far.
Oh, I totally agree. So I think that he's a good player, knows he's a good player, and is well aware that there are 3 other people that have one more title than him. And with that said, you can just see the aggression and the trying to make the trades, and you can just tell that this guy knows that he hasn't won a title for 5 years, and boy, does he want it.
All right. That wraps up Bad Guys. Next, we're going to go back down to the bottom of the list, the 11th ranked team. And this is going to be one of the more interesting conversations because this is a perennial powerhouse that is struggling, and that is WNS Eagles. And WNS Eagles, it has a little bit of a conundrum on their hands, if you ask me, because they have a team that is either A, having a bad season individually, or they have a team that is starting to age a little bit. And at the time of the draft, it looked like really good players. WNS Eagles has Edelman. WNS Eagles has Russell. WNS Eagles has Zeke Elliott. All those players are really good, not having a great season.
Without a doubt. You look at this team, first and foremost, like you said, this is a rare position for WNS Eagles. Any other year that we have done this, we would never even be talking about him being in 11th place. So this is rarefied air for him to be down here in this situation.
Now, to that point, WNS Eagles is known to sell the farm a little bit. Now, he doesn't sell out. He doesn't give his team up, but he'll sell the farm a little bit to get some players. So I think it caught up with him a little bit in the draft this year.
Yeah, I think what did they say? The roosters came home to roost or whatever? Is that an expression that some people use? He is the antithesis of cheeseheads, and it probably goes back to that age gap where I honestly believe that this is a year, instead of being a buyer, he should have probably just bit the bullet, take one on the chin, maybe sell a couple of your good players and get ready for next year. But to his credit, he won't give up. And to
that point, I think when we make our playoff predictions later, that he will be talked about.
Yeah, that could come into play. I definitely agree.
Even though he's 11th right now.
Yes, he's 11th, and when you look at the points, I mean, even though he's only a game back of a lot of people, he'd have a hard time winning any tiebreakers because where he's at with the point situation. Yep. So a tie, him getting the same record isn't good enough. I mean, he's down pretty good in points. So he, in reality, instead of him being a game behind 8th place, he's a game and a half. We got 4 to go. I mean, you got to gain 2 games over 4. Not easy.
He is 11th in his standings and 11th in points scored with 920 points.
I can't get any fairer than that.
One other point that I'll make about his roster is same exact thing that I was talking about, Edelman, Russell, Zeke Elliott. It's the perfect example. He has Greg Olson, someone that you would think preseason is going to be a great tight end. He was actually preseason ranked 63 overall.
Wow.
He's currently setting at 218 with 43 fantasy points scored.
Yeah, and I know that his first draft pick, he took Ezekiel Elliott, and there's no way that's lived up to where that was valued at.
Absolutely.
And I think the more I look at it, I think WS Eagles may have the championship roster for a 2016 season.
There are 3 members of this league, 3 teams in this league that do not have a player in the top 10 of overall scoring currently. WNS Eagles is one of those teams. They have Kirk Cousins at 11.
Gotcha.
We have, and Cheeseheads was one of the other ones. And there's actually, the third one's actually surprising, and we'll bring that up in momentarily. Do you have anything else on WNS Eagles?
Nope. Quality player, having a down year. We'll see. He made a move to be a buyer. We'll see if that comes back and bite him, because that will be worst case scenarios for him to make a move, give a draft pick for next year. Yep. Think about that. He actually sacrificed a 2019. Yep. And then if you don't make the playoffs, that's bad. So, but I do like you.
Back up to the top. This time, we're going to go with 3rd place. Currently tied with Bad Guys, but having 10 less points scored. So very, very close teams. This is Big Limbs.
Huge problem. A huge problem. That is a huge problem.
So you think he has a bigger problem?
I think he's got a huge problem.
So Big Limbs, as we said, has 1,005 points scored. Big Limbs, though, is very notable in the fact that they are 3rd ranked in points against with 1,057 points. As I mentioned, there are 3 teams that do not have a player in the top 10. Big Limbs is the 3rd team. They do not have a player in the top 10, but it's interesting. A matter of fact, Big Limbs does not have a scoring player ranked in the top 15.
Wow.
But they have 16, 17, and 18. So, what's your thoughts on Big Limbs?
I think top to bottom, a solid roster. I guess let me start. Big Limbs, I believe, is the newest member of the league. I believe this is only year 3.
Yes, I think you're right.
So, instead of just getting right into his roster, I'm just looking at him in more of a macro sense here. 3rd year in the league, in the first 2 years, he did not make the playoffs. This is a guy, prideful guy like any other guy. This guy, playoffs are bust this year. There's no way that he would take the Cheeseheads route. He's a guy's guy. He knows I'm making the playoffs because I don't want to hear people talk about me missing the playoffs 3 straight years. So he's definitely in a boom or bust mode. Like you said in the intro, Big Limbs, making big moves. So solid roster to me, top to bottom. I think that, I think two players, honestly, I look at his roster, you can look at the whole thing, two players make or break it this guy's season.
Who's that?
Tom Brady, Josh Gordon.
Yes.
That is
the second one more than the first.
Yeah, but there's a little bit where they kind of go hand in hand there, but I'm just saying, I'm a believer that Brady's big fantasy number days are over. I think he's overvalued. Especially, for most people, he's their number one quarterback. And then that Josh Gordon, I think that's going to be a boom or bust play week to week. I think that's a guy who will have a week where he has 8 catches, 140 yards, and a touchdown. And the following week, he'll have 3 catches for 27 yards.
Oh, it's like having one of Drew Brees' wide receivers.
But you know what? On a fantasy team, you want that to be like your number 3 receiver. You know what I mean? You want that
absolutely.
to be. You want that boom or bust for number 3. But I just don't like it at number 1. But even though probably Smith-Schuster is his number 1, but I'm just saying the Gordon, I feel like that the Gordon-Brady combination that will determine how far this guy goes in the playoffs. Because when you look at the standings, he's comfortably in. It would take a drastic no-dive to miss the playoffs. So I love his running back. I mean, one of the best running back. I mean, you got Melvin Gordon and Joe Mixon. That's solid. I mean, that's as solid as you can be. And then Phillip Rivers, that's another solid quarterback. Tight end is probably weak. I mean, I don't think anybody out there is clamoring for Benjamin Watson.
To your point with Brady and Gordon, too, you always, going into the playoffs in fantasy, you always want teams that are competing. You want players that are on teams that are competing. Yes. Obviously, they're going to be right there.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else on big limbs?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Now we're going to go back down to the number 10 ranked team in the league, and that is Carl's Primo team. Carl's Primo team has someone on it named Nick Mullins as a quarterback.
That's not good.
Now, in all seriousness, though, he's had a little bit of bad luck. He has A.J. Green on that team that's out. He has Antonio Brown as the number 1 pick in the draft. He also has Sanu, which isn't Sanu anymore.
You can't put lipstick on a pig, right? This whole team's trending down. Even like Antonio Brown, he's having an okay season, but he took him with the first pick in the draft. When you take someone with the first pick of the draft, I guarantee you Antonio Brown is probably not even top 4 or 5 for wide receivers for the season.
Yeah.
So I feel like when you look, and the AJ Green thing, yeah, you could say he's unlucky with AJ Green being hurt, but the last time I checked, AJ Green is hurt every year.
Yeah, if I was to describe Carl's Primo team in a word, I would say scattered. The team just is scattered. It's just not.
Yes.
It's not a conducive, good, solid unit. When
you look at the team, it just seems like a collection of names. It doesn't feel like you don't have really any good quarterback receiver combos. There's not a whole lot to get excited about here. It's honestly, I think it all started with a bad draft. I feel like if you look at Carl's first 5 picks, those are all people that he probably took a round too early. You know what I mean? Yeah. At the end of the day, when every pick that you get, you've overvalued them, it's just simply going to catch up with you. And kind of what I touched upon with WNS Eagles, I think that this Carl M., he used to be called Uncle Buck. I refer to him as Uncle Suck. But he's one of these guys that actually made a move as a buyer. And, we'll get into our playoff picks at the end. But I tell you, I think it's going to end up kind of biting him. I could not imagine actually making a move, giving up for something in 2019 when I don't even think you're going to make it for 2018. So not a whole lot of positive to say here. I also believe he's a Steelers fan too, so he has that going against him. So,
perennial bottom team, right?
That's a little harsh.
Okay.
Wait, then again, I'm the one that just referred to him as Uncle Suck.
That is Carl's Primo team.
I believe that he may still be in the process of trying to get Peyton Manning again.
So, back up to the top half of the league, and next we are going to cover Hog Heaven. Hog Heaven started out as hot as you can start out, won 6 straight games, and now is tied with the longest losing streak in the league. Hog Heaven also is very far down, I believe 3rd or 4th in points scored, and number 1 in points scored against, or number 12, however you want to look at that, least points scored against in the league. What do you think, Greek? What do you think about Hog Heaven?
Hog Heaven. Ooh, where to begin?
Perennial powerhouse.
Cornerstone franchise of the league. He definitely one of the 3 or 4 banner franchises you're thinking of. For me, when I take a look at the roster, real quick, it's solid as always. It's solid. I have a weird thing with Hog Heaven. Every year, I like his roster. I never love it. Happens to me every year. It's always the same. Never dislike it, but I never love it. Always like it. And I'll tell you, for me, it's like if I were a betting man, which I'm not, he always exceeds expectations to me. I always think that he always ends up 1 or 2 notches a little higher than I think he's going to.
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone will disagree. 2 years ago, Hog Heaven...
2016.
2 years ago, in my opinion, Hog Heaven takes not a gold team, takes a silver team and goes undefeated.
Undefeated. Regular season, playoffs, the whole thing.
To your point, definitely, who saw that coming? I'm not even saying with the roster. I mean, or I don't even mean like in general, whoever sees an undefeated season in fantasy, but I mean, taking the roster into account.
Oh, you know exactly. You know who 2016 Hog Heaven was? 2016 Hog Heaven was 2002 Ohio State.
Oh, yes.
That's
absolutely.
exactly who they were.
Yep.
Did they blow anybody out? No, not really. Maybe they may have put it on Indiana or Purdue or something. But I'm saying at the end of the day, they won all their games by 7 to 10 points, some by a field goal.
And also came back and was in the last 4. Won a playoff game last year. Came back, almost won the championship again. But cannot disagree with you. A roster that is overachieving just based on it's fantasy luck, right? I'm not going to go as far, because to me, I think that there's been a regression to the mean. And now, if you were to sit here and tell me if he was 9-0 or 8-1, would I say he's overvalued? At 6-3, I think he's exactly where he should be. That's true.
I mean, without that, I mean, before the 3-game losing streak, yeah, I agree with you. Now, not so much. I mean, look at his quarterbacks. Drew Brees and Trubisky next to Pat Mahomes. Yeah. Probably the best fantasy steal. I mean, that's 2 solid wide receivers. And then also that Adrian Peterson. That is somebody that nobody even really wanted. And then, look, that's a solid running back.
And the Peterson kind of counteracted. It took David Johnson 3rd in the draft, right? Definitely not number 3 in the league, right?
Kind of like WNS with Ezekiel. I mean, if you would have told me Ezekiel and David Johnson, both of those teams, you know what I mean?
Yep, and then took Dalvin Cook as well as the second, and ends up with, traded him away last week.
Yep.
But has Latavius Murray there kind of to supplement that. So
probably has the best tight end that I would want in Kelsey. I mean, Kelsey, Ertz. I mean, I'm down on Gronk, so Kelsey and Ertz to me are the 1-2 punches of tight ends you want in this. A top end tight end. Got Tyler Boyd, one of the best waiver wire pickups of the season, in my opinion. That Philip Lindsay from Denver that Nostradamus got, I thought was a top level waiver wire pick, but then that Tyler Boyd is right up there. For me, at the end of the day, like I said, solid roster. The only thing that I really question is depth at wide receiver. Yep. I mean, I
believe he as I mentioned, he traded away Dalvin Cook, and believe he tried to supplement his wide receivers by picking up Amari Cooper. So we'll see how that works out for him.
Same way I feel about bad guys. Dalvin Cook is a boomer bust play. The same way for Hog of Heaven. I don't blame him. Amari Cooper, you had a needed receiver. It's a boomer bust play. Agreed.
Anything else with Hog Heaven?
No, I'll tell you. I guarantee you I'll doubt him, and then he'll end up surprising me, and end up probably win the championship again.
So now we're getting into kind of the meat of the league. We're getting into these ones. I mean, I think we agree the top 3 or 4 are probably going to make the playoffs. We agree the bottom 3 or 4, or if they're going to make the playoffs, they're going to have to make a real move, right?
Yeah, it gets interesting between 5 and 9.
So number 9 on our list is Jessica's team. Jessica's team setting in 9th place. So the one thing that jumps out to me about Jessica's team's roster, is the fact that she has her quarterbacks. So her quarterbacks are Alex Smith, right?
Yes.
Wentz.
Yes.
And Flacco. Well, Alex Smith and Wentz haven't played each other yet. So those two teams are going to play each other over the course of the back half of the season. And are you playing Flacco?
Well, I probably don't even have him on my roster.
But this is the crazy part. He's the highest scoring player on our team.
I thought you were coming back with that. That is crazy. Like that. Now, with that said, keep in mind that Carson Wentz was out the first few games, so that does skew their statistics just a tiny bit.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
So, but yeah, at the end of the day, if Flacco is your highest scoring person moving forward at this point of the season, then you should be happy that you're not 0-10 or 0-9.
That's true. I don't think that her season isn't over.
No.
I mean, she could make the playoffs, but certainly not a fantastic roster right now. I mean, Alex Smith, I'm a Redskins fan. I like him on the team, actually, but he's not Mr. Fantasy scoring points, right?
He was last year.
So he was the starter for Kansas City last year?
Yeah, he was the starter for Kansas City last year. I'm saying if anybody looks great, looks so different than he did. I mean, at this point, it's official. Andy Reid is a guru. I'm not saying necessarily winning championships, but he makes quarterbacks into fantasy point machines.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you, she does have a receiver that I really, really like in that Thielen.
When I look at her team, first and foremost, she's the only girl in the league, a woman in the land of men.
Yeah.
Have never actually seen her, but I heard she's a looker. But top heavy. That's the way I describe her team. Top heavy.
I thought you were going to describe her that way.
Oh, Floyd, this is a family show. Top heavy. When I say that, what I mean is, if I told you your number one quarterback is Wentz, your number one receiver is Thielen, who I'm with you, I love.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, might be the most consistent receiver in fantasy. And then your number one running back is Kareem Hunt.
Oh, wow.
That is a trio right there.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a very top-heavy team, but boy, the middle, just like the meat of the sandwich, don't love it. I mean, when I see names like Sterling Shepard, Traquan Smith, Jordan Reed at tight end are just, as much as I love the top of the roster, I almost dislike the bottom just as much as I like the top.
Has an interesting statistic here. She definitely, Jessica's team is by far the team that has the closest disparity between points scored and points scored against.
Oh, really?
A 977 for, 974 against.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. I'd like the stats with the points against, points for. I need to pay attention to that a little bit more.
Not a big shaker and mover, but with 10 moves, something pretty normal, but at the same time seems to be a big free agent because she is number one on the waiver wire currently.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed about this team is very conservative in terms of this is a league that has probably 4 to 5 people every year making big moves, big trades, big moves.
And even like you mentioned earlier, Carl's Primo team was never much of a trading team, but traded this year.
Don't tell him that.
Now Jessica, on the other hand, I don't know if we'll ever see her trade.
I honestly actually have it written here in my notes. There's just a point where someone's got to adapt to the league they're in.
Yeah.
I think if Jessica was in a league that didn't trade, she probably would fare a lot better. I think that the whole trading actually works against her. So you're at a point, you got to sink or swim, right?
Yeah.
It's time to, I think you have to adapt. You either need to make a move here, buy something and get your team better, or you know what? At the very least, if things don't go your way next couple weeks, sell a couple of those parts and get ready for 2019.
Yes, I agree. Anything else on Jessica's team?
No, once again, I've heard from other people that she is a looker.
All right, we'll move to the number 5 team in the league currently, and that is Dim Sum. Dim Sum surprised the league a few years ago, got Brady in the draft. He had a fantastic year, and he went on to win the actual championship.
That was 2013. Dim Sum probably isn't as avid as a football fan as some others in the league, probably doesn't follow as closely, but I will say this, and just sports in general. Dim Sum isn't into it like everyone else, but I will say this, Dim Sum is the only person to consecutively hold the fantasy football championship and the NCAA championship at the same time.
Yes.
So the only person to have the, quote, Tiger Slam.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you this, Dim Sum's never the bottom of the league.
No.
I mean, Dim Sum, other than that year when they went on to win the whole thing, I mean, they're always right in that 4 to 9 range, you know what I mean?
I always look at that team as weirdly scary.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? There's just something about it.
Now, on the other hand, Dim Sum does currently have 3 players on the bench that are owned by less than 40% of all Yahoo users.
And that's, to me, just goes to point what I just said. I just don't think that there's the commitment there that there is to other members.
Agreed. Now, on the flip side of that, guess who old Dim Sum does have? Golden Tate.
Golden Tate, really?
Now that could be big time.
Yeah, that's somebody that, especially around playoff time, now he's on a team that's going to be competing every week, playing meaningful games, where if you got Golden Tate as your number 3 wide receiver, that's a good situation to be in.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, I look at this, to your point, probably not the most studied owner in the league. I think we all know the pitfall of having a New England running back as one of your starting running backs.
Running back by committee. Those are ugly words in the fantasy world.
Now, I'm going to have a little bit of a dark horse later who I think could win the championship. I'm going to go the other way with Dim Sum. I think it's possible Dim Sum could miss the playoffs.
Oh, and so currently I believe what stands 5th?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be, you're putting it out there.
Yeah, that's a surpriser.
That's a bold move. That's a bold strategy, Cotton.
The Ocho. Do you have anything else on Dim Sum?
Actually, kind of. We just spoke about Jessica's team. I feel like his team is the same exact thing. I feel like it's ridiculously top-heavy. If you look, that Andrew Luck, I believe, is a top 2 or top 3 scoring quarterback as of right now. Mm-hmm. And is there anybody in the fantasy world that doesn't want Todd Gurley?
Oh, yeah. His quarterbacks are going to make or break him. Who's his other quarterback? It's he's got
he's also
Luck and
Mariota. That's solid. They're
solid, but I can see those teams realizing they're not going to make realizing they're not going to make the playoffs, and all of a sudden they're not.
I would agree with you on other years, but right now I believe Tennessee's record, they're going to be in the playoff push in that AFC South.
Yep.
They're going to be in it week 6 weeks. And the thing about that Mariota, I'm not telling you he's going to throw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, but man, he's going to always have that 20 yards rushing and that rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
That's 8 points.
Yep.
So for me, if you told me that if you could tell me, hey, on your fictional team, would you take Mariota as your number 2 quarterback? I'll take him 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So, another quick thing about Dim Sum that I would just like to say I think is a great thing, that in years past, I've seen Dim Sum in this situation kind of middle to pack, about 3 weeks out of the playoffs, and I've seen him sell. Mm-hmm. And been a little disappointed, just like, man, why didn't he go for it? And last week or the week before, I'm not sure, he made a move as a buyer. So I thought it was kind of refreshing to see, you know what, I'm not selling, I'm going for this. Because you know what, at the end of the day, you get in the top 8, you got a shot.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Let's go back down towards more to the bottom of the pack. Not the bottom. We're getting definitely towards the center here. And we're going to go with probably, in my opinion, the most interesting, 2 teams on here are very interesting. This one has an interesting trajectory right now. And the number 8 team in the league it's not a tumor. Okay.
An interesting team and an interesting owner.
For sure. I tell you what, if you give me, Mahomes is obviously one that's, the top scorer in the league, but I'll tell you right now, it's not a tumor. Has Roethlisberger and those Steelers, they look like they are focused on making those playoffs, and I think you're going to get some big points out of him going forward.
Oh, we're taping this on a Friday, and actually, Pittsburgh had a Thursday night game, and I believe that Ben Roethlisberger had 35 fantasy points last night.
Wow.
So, I definitely tend to agree with you.
Now, on the other side of that, his other quarterback's Dak.
Yeah, I don't love Dak at all.
I think if you look at his roster, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you look at his roster, he really has a crazy yin and yang roster. He has Roethlisberger and Dak. Mm-hmm. Then you say, well, he's got Saquon, but he also has Duke Johnson Jr.
Duke Johnson Jr.
He's got Keenan Allen, but he's also got Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah, it's yin and yang. He's a little bit all over the place. On a personal note, I would just like to say I'm rooting for this guy. Been in the league for a lot of years, and I know hasn't made the playoffs in recent years. I know that sources tell me that this guy's putting the time in, working the waiver wire, trying to make moves, and all I can tell you is I like his team. I don't love it. I'm not going to beat it up too much. All I can tell you at the end of the day, I hope this team makes the final 8.
Setting at 4-5, he's had 1,009 points scored, and with 1,063 scored against, which is actually number 1 in the league for scored against. 1,063 points, most points scored against. Started out hot. I think was setting in like the 4th or 5th spot, something like that.
Yeah, past couple weeks haven't been good.
Currently there with Hog Heaven on a 3-game losing streak.
Just like last week, he put up a legitimate 110, 115 points and just ran into that buzzsaw, also known as Nostradamus. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, you can't get mad if your team scores 115, 120, right?
Interesting footnote. It's a tumor, or it's not a tumor.
That's the macabre version.
It's not a tumor. Scored 150 points in week 6.
Wow, that's got to be the highest for the year, right?
It's not. Chris from State Farm scored 150 points in week 1. Imagine what that outlook was like.
There's always doesn't seem like every year, week 1, someone scores like 160 points.
Number 1 for the season, Jessica's team has a 152 in week 7.
Wow. How you like them apples?
What has she got for it's not a tumor? I'm rooting for him as well.
Totally. Good guy, good owner. Had a bad run luck in recent years. I just know that it's just somebody that's put the time in that deserves to get a playoff run.
I hope he makes the playoffs, and I hope he has a good season.
With all that said, I've been giving him love. I hated the trade he made with Cheeseheads. I shook my head at it.
I'm not privy to it. What was it?
Let me see if I can find it here. Cheeseheads and traded away Cole Beasley and Marshawn Lynch and a 6th round pick for Sammy Watkins and Marlon Mack for an 11. So basically gave up a 6th round pick to get Sammy Watkins and Marlon Mack. I just don't love it.
I mean, in my opinion, kind of like traded for even players and just traded down the
totally pick. Agree. I don't know if but then again, with that said, I don't love the trade, but I love the initiative that he's going for it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, rooting for you. It's not a tumor.
Rooting for you. Going back up the list, we have 2 teams remaining. I believe, correct? Yes, we have 2 teams remaining. Currently number 6 in the league. My dark horse, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Chris from State Farm. So Chris from State Farm is this team. I would describe it as a solid team. It's a solid team. They are currently 6, as I mentioned, and they are my dark horse pick. Not my favorite. My dark horse pick that could come through and win the whole thing.
Let's be honest. What is a dark horse? It can't be someone in the top 4, top 5. That's not a dark horse,
right?
I mean, you're picking someone from the middle of the pack. And when I think of this team, I think of 3 words: quarterback, quarterback, and quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that. Cam Newton, Aaron Rodgers. Any team that has those 2 going, any week, they could basically combine for 70 points.
And as we talked about, two teams that are going to be in the hunt. Two teams that are going to keep playing.
Great point. Even though I don't love the Packers moving forward.
Number 2, points scored in the league.
Number
1,031 points.
Yep. That's it's number 2 in points. That has to go. There's a direct correlation between that and the quarterback play. That's 2. That's the best quarterback tandem in the league. Now, with that said, on the positive, I feel like might be the worst running back situation.
What are you looking at?
Running backs I see right now are Nick Chubb and LaShawn McCoy.
Chubb's not horrible, but yeah, I agree with you. Definitely no superstars on the team.
Yeah, I just feel like it's at this point, what do you think? You just don't. I like known commodities, okay? And to me, Nick Chubb is an unknown commodity. He's like Josh Gordon to me. I just don't know what he's giving you every week. I could see Nick Chubb next week having 20 carries for 100 yards a touchdown. I could see him having 8 carries for 14 yards.
On the flip side of that, though, he's got Julio, and we know Julio's hit or miss, and Julio's been a lot of miss.
I know, but I feel like there's a law of averages where if you gotten by this far with him having a bad, don't you feel like there's going to be an uptick coming?
Yeah, I mean, also has Demaryius Thomas and has Robert Woods. I mean, that's a pretty strong wide receiver crew.
I agree, and like I said, solid team. Just for me, running back is a problem for him. And I did hear, I wasn't actually at the draft, but I heard that he had a proxy draft his team, and the guy
that's publicly known.
Is it okay? Yeah. The guy did a good job, but man, that guy, the running backs he drafted for him, that guy must be some sort of joke. I mean, that's ridiculous. So next year, Chris from State Farm, send a better proxy, or just show up yourself. Jack's Steakhouse, located on Route 33.
Okay, Chris from State Farm. Next to our last team, currently setting is actually tied in an actual standings with a 4-5 record, tied with Chris from State Farm. The number 7 ranked team in the Buckeye Fantasy Football League is Sweetness.
Well, they call me Sweetness, and I like to dance. Running the ball is like making more mans.
Sweetness is currently setting at 4-5, as I mentioned. And, interestingly, they are on a 3-game winning streak. So at one point in time, Sweetness was 1-5.
Yeah, I've heard from a source that said the Sweetness was sweating making the playoffs.
He was the Sweetness.
Sweetness. But
What you got on Sweetness?
Sweetness. Well, it started pretty rough. Had a lot of injuries. Honestly,
I thought there for a while that, with all those injuries, I thought he was going to have a really hard time.
That's what she said.
Yeah, totally agree. Started rough. Going into this year, had a lot of picks. The previous year, Sweetness was a seller. So Sweetness was nothing like what Cheeseheads will have next year, but Sweetness did have a stockpile of picks. I believe had two ones, which is unprecedented, never happened. Had 2 1s and 2 3s.
Sweetness had 2 number 1s,
Two
and
ones.
they're starting Baker Mayfield.
2, yeah. And then, but long story short, had a lot of injuries though. Look at this roster. Leonard Fournette really hasn't played all year. Traded for Sony Michel, hasn't really played in 3 or 4 weeks. T.Y. Hilton's been hurt all year. Tight end O.J. Howard's been hurt a lot. So dealt with a lot of injuries, I feel like got through the storm. And honestly, moving forward, this is a team I would not want to play. If I tell you today, I think this team makes the playoffs, and I don't think you want to play it.
Yeah, I agree. Goff is as solid as they come this year. Even when you dig in a little bit into their roster, Njoku's no joke. That's a decent tight end. T.Y. Hilton had better years, but still solid.
Yeah, if he on a good team, he's your number 3 wide receiver.
Yeah.
Also, has Goff. To me, it's you mentioned the Goff. I'm totally with you, and also that Kamara, man, that Goff and Kamara.
Kamara.
That's like. What do you? Don't you feel like it's Kamara and Gurley and everybody else when it comes to fantasy?
Yeah.
So you got that, and then now you got Goff, and then I look at those wide receivers. You got that Mike Evans. They come back. They're behind in so many games, and they get so much garbage. Mike Evans. He has games where he gets you 150 yards and 2 touchdowns.
I remember when I was researching for this, I saw someone had Ingram, and I felt bad for him.
Oh, it's WNS Eagles.
WNS Eagles.
Common theme.
Yeah, that's exactly what we talked about with him, right?
Yeah, that's. For me, one person jumps out to me off his right, and it's Odell Beckham. I swear, for me, Odell Beckham is like T.O. 10 years ago. I would rather lose without him than win with that guy. I want no part of that. I don't want any part of that mojo on my team. Mm-hmm. I know that Nostradamus.
He's not good in the locker room.
Oh, yes. I know back in 2015, Nostradamus had Odell Beckham was in the fantasy championship.
In the championship
game, and Odell Beckham got suspended for fighting the week before with Josh Norman. Nostradamus went on to lose that championship by 4 points.
Wow.
So we all have the one that got away. So maybe we should put maybe we'll go ahead and instead of saying Hulk Heaven and Nostradamus have 3, we'll go ahead and give them 3.5.
3.5.
3.5. Together they have 7.
All right. So that's the rundown of the teams. If you didn't follow that completely, it's Nostradamus, Bad Guys, Big Limbs, Hog Heaven, Dim Sum, Chris from State Farm, Sweetness, It's Not a Tumor, Jessica's team, Carl's Primo team, WNS Eagles, and Cheeseheads. So let's move on to our next segment of the podcast, and we're kind of starting to wind it down here. But let's get down to brass tacks and talk about who's going to make these playoffs, or more importantly, who's not.
Yes.
Who's your number 1 team, without a doubt, not making the playoffs?
Self-destruct sequence activated.
I'm assuming you're referring to...
that cheese has gone bad.
Don't leave it out. So, yes, I agree. That's my number 1 team not making the playoffs.
Nobody eat the cheese. The cheese has gone bad.
Who would be more surprised? Donald Trump winning the presidency or Cheeseheads making the playoffs?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we both. I don't think we're going to really. There's no reason to debate Cheeseheads. Like I said, I really look forward to having a conversation about Ricky Seals Jones on that roster. But yeah, Cheeseheads
Nick
is out.
O'Leary.
But there's always next year, Cheeseheads. for me, do you want to just give me your next likely?
Both of us, our number one ranking
Yes.
for not making the playoffs is Cheeseheads.
Yeah.
Number 2 in my ranking is Carl's Primo team.
Yes, formerly known as Uncle Suck. I actually totally agree with that.
Okay, so we're simpatico with those two. Number 3 on my list of not making the playoffs, Jessica's team.
Really?
Yes. I don't think I just don't think the team has the legs. Now, the one thing where I could get a little messed up is if there's some major injury and she has that number 1 waiver.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that number 1 waiver where I just know people just use it. They have such different philosophy on those waivers. Some people just hold on to it like a precious baseball card,
Yep.
and other people are just winging that thing every week. It's just amazing to see how people's different philosophies on the waiver wire. But yeah, I honestly, I actually have her making the playoffs. For me, it goes back to what we said. I think that top end talent, those top 3 moving forward,
We'll pull her through.
Get her through. And schedule wise, I don't think she has a super hard schedule.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I haven't even looked at that, but yeah, that's a good point. It's probably more insight than I would give. But if I had to bet money, I'm betting against Jessica's team making the playoffs. Who's your next?
My next one is WNS Eagles. I think he's got a lot going against him. His schedule's pretty tough down the stretch. He'll get his easy win this week against Cheeseheads, but moving forward, I believe he plays Bad Guys and Nostradamus to finish out the season. And like I said earlier, WNS Eagles will not win any tiebreakers against anybody. So he can't just tie someone. He's got to get one game better than them.
That's a very good point, because so many of those are ties at the end that end up whoever has the most points. Kind of to our previous conversation on WNS Eagles, the only reservation I have, I don't think he's going to make it either. Okay, let me make that clear. I don't think WNS Eagles makes the playoffs, but they ain't giving up.
I'll tell you, I'll go even one further for you. I'm with you. I don't think that he makes it, but if he does make it, there's just something about the mystique.
Oh yeah,
where if he makes it, I swear I haven't spoke to Nostradamus, but if Nostradamus is at 1 and that WNS Eagles 608,
yeah,
that guy will not sleep well the night before.
Absolutely.
That is a guy there, and they're a player. I mean, let's be honest, we don't love Zeke right now.
Right.
But what happens when Zeke? What about Kirk Cousins? I mean, these are, even though they're not having great years, these are great names, and at any point they could pop. So
Yep.
I'm with you. I don't think WNS Eagles makes it, but at the same time, boy, if he makes it, watch out.
So that's my 4. I have Cheeseheads, Carl's Primo team, Jessica's team, and WNS Eagles. But obviously, you didn't have Jessica, so we had a little bit of a disagreement. Who's your 4th team not making it?
Well, my 4th team, for me, I really didn't have much of trouble with Carl and WNS Eagles Cheeseheads. For me, when it came down that last spot, it was between 3 teams.
Okay.
And Jessica's team was one of them that was part of that 3 that, they were one of the 3 that I actually debated. I kept them in. The other 2, it came down to Chris and Matt.
And you didn't pick Jessica's team not making it.
Nope, I did not.
Shocking.
Chris and Matt, those were the 2 that it really came down to. Those are the 2 that I think that moving forward that, they're going to...
Yes.
And for me, it's a schedule thing. It goes back to that schedule. I do not like Chris from Starting Farm schedule moving forward. I think he's got a lot tougher schedule than It's Not a Tumor. If you look at week 13, which I believe will be, essentially a playoff game, It's Not a Tumor plays Cheeseheads. It's a free win the last week. State Farm plays Jessica's team. And I think that those teams, I mean, who knows who's going to win that one? All I can tell you is right now, don't we both know that It's Not a Tumor is going to beat Cheeseheads?
Yeah.
So for that reason, I'm going to give it to It's Not a Tumor. They're my number 8 seed. Chris from State Farm.
So you have Chris from State Farm not making the playoffs. I have him as my dark horse that could possibly win the whole thing.
That is, there's a lot of a low floor and a high ceiling for Chris from State Farm right now. And I totally agree with that dark horse thing. With those quarterbacks, just don't like his schedule moving forward.
Don't worry about it, Jake. It's just fantasy. So, interesting that we skip over Sweetness, and I think we assume they make the playoffs.
Oh, I think Sweetness is in. I think Sweetness at this point with the points will getting pretty comfortable with points where I think all those people below him, he would win any tiebreaker. Mm-hmm. So essentially, he's instead of being a game up, he's essentially a game and a half. I just think, and I think that team's solid. I think it's getting healthy, and honestly, Sweetness is I don't know. Again,
we're recording this on November 9th, Friday, November 9th, and very interesting game coming up this week. I think it's the game of the week, and for me, and a very important game. It's Not a Tumor plays big limbs,
Okay.
And Sweetness and Christmas State Farm both have tough games.
Yes.
So potentially, who they play? You got the
Christmas State Farm plays Dim Sum.
Okay.
And It's Not a Tumor plays Big Limbs.
No, who's Sweetness play?
Sweetness plays Bad Guys.
See, so you got Christmas State Farm playing a team that's Dim Sum above them, and Sweetness playing Bad Guys, the number 2 team. They could lose that game. If It's Not a Tumor somehow can beat Big Limbs, all of a sudden they're back in it.
Oh, without a doubt. And then right now, when you look at the projections right now going into this on a Friday afternoon, right now the Big Limbs is projected to get 127. It's Not a Tumor is projected to get 126. And kind of along the same lines, Christmas State Farm is projected to get 107, and Dim Sum's 111. So these are all going to be good nail-biter games.
Yep. Good ones.
Yep.
Okay. Do you have anything else to talk about with this league? Because I have one more quick segment at the end of this.
Nothing right now. Maybe something I might be able to expound on what you say, but I have nothing.
Okay. The only other thing that I wanted to cover was we wanted to talk a little bit about the overall record. So you mentioned before that Dim Sum won the football one year and then went on to win the NCAA brackets.
2013.
So the overall, if you put together the fantasy football and the fantasy March Madness, the total championships are listed, and they go as follows. Nostradamus has 6 championships. Bad Guys has 3. So Bad Guys has 2 in football and 1 in basketball. Hog Heaven has 3. Tim Hess has 3.
Only playing football.
So Tim Hess. He doesn't do the.
I sent him an invite.
What the hell are you doing, WNS Eagles?
He's probably already doing. He's too busy with research for fantasy football.
Jared Barnett has 2, so he has a football and a basketball then.
And retired. He 2, one of each, and yeah.
Probably can't afford it.
Right now, that entry fee is
We raised it.
Yeah,
we raised it.
He was into it. He said it was just $1 and cents thing. Once it gets to a certain point, does that make sense for him financially? So,
we have Big Limbs with 2. Most of those must be basketball.
Yes.
Dim Sum again. Has 2. The year that was the 1 year, the magical year. Won both of them.
And leave it to Dim Sum. Another interesting fact: the year that he did the Tiger Slam was 2013. Leave it to Dim Sum to do it on a 13.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Is that very Dim Sumish?
Yeah. Then you got Sweetness, and Sweetness has a very interesting history. Hasn't won any football, but actually had an amazing feat winning back-to-back. Basketball.
Back-to-back basketball. Sweetness for me kind of is in that realm with Bad Guys and Big Limbs. These are guys that want to win.
Yeah.
I could see. I mean, I'm telling you right now, Sweetness. We know you're checking that stuff when you wake up in the morning. You might act like you're not checking it. We know you're checking it. You want to win. Big Limbs, Bad Guys, Sweetness. These are the guys. These guys want to win championships. Mentioning
Sweetness's back-to-back championships, we'll also talk about real quick about because this season could be impactful on this. So Hog Heaven's also not only having an undefeated season, also the only back-to-back fantasy football championship winner. And Nostradamus could tie that this year.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like Nostradamus has had so much go his way. I would be shocked. I think he'll win the regular season title, win the points title. I just think he gets tripped up in the playoffs. So maybe he'll do it, maybe he won't. I'm betting against it, though.
The only other mentionable, we have a few other championships, single championships, but the only one that's still kind of active in football and the basketball is Jessica's team.
Jessica. She got a basketball. Well deserved.
So, pretty good show.
Yeah, I would say so.
Hope if you guys enjoy this, give us some feedback and let us know, and we'll continue to do this into the season, maybe beginning of next season, that type of thing. So this is how it's going to go. I'm going to try. This is November 9th again. This is a Friday. I'm going to try to put this out as soon as I possibly can, maybe even tonight. I think I'm going to try to put it on YouTube, and if not YouTube, I'll put it on Google Drive. We'll see how that goes. Again, give us some feedback. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you want us to continue doing this. Anything else, Greek?
No. Hopefully we're back in hopefully we get a good feedback. We'll come back in a few weeks with a full playoff preview with predictions and everything. Predictions sure to go wrong.
Hopefully. Alrighty. So this is the Fantasy Football Forum mid-year review. All I have left to say is go Redskins and go Bucks.
The Greek signs out.
Out.